Hey, what's going on? It's Mike, and I'm a filmmaker and photographer based here in Memphis, Tennessee. And I want to talk to you about the look that I go for when I edit photos or even video. So I think the big rave right now is having a film aesthetic, and there's just something about the way film looks that is nostalgic and also just beautiful. Now, don't get me wrong, I love digital cameras, but sometimes they're a bit too sharp and a bit too clinical. And I shoot Sony, and anyone who shoots Sony knows that Sony is a very, very sharp image. Now, that's great for some things, but sometimes you want to take a little bit of the edge off, and that's what brings me to this video. This video is about a software that I use to give me that film look and take a little bit of that digital harshness off, and that software is Dehancer. Now, quick disclaimer, Dehancer did send me over Dehancer, but they don't get to see this video at all, and these are just my thoughts on Dehancer. So I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube about Dehancer, but what I wanted to do was go out and get some real clips and some real world scenarios and bring them into my editing software and show you how I edit them. So I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube about Dehancer, but what I wanted to do was something a little bit different. So I went out and got a whole bunch of clips, and I'm bringing them into my editing software so that you can see how I would edit the footage and how Dehancer really works and how powerful it really is. So let's go into my NLE. Lego, the power of TV magic. So Final Cut is my editing software of choice, but if you use another editing software like DaVinci or Premiere, it'll work with that as well. The principles remain the same, but I use Final Cut. So here we go. All right, so this is how I use Dehancer. We're gonna edit this as if it was one long clip, even though normally I would section this off. We're gonna edit it like one long clip, and I'll show you how I adjust things within it. Okay, so first thing you do in Final Cut, you wanna bring in an adjustment layer. And if you don't know how to add an adjustment layer to your clips, there's like a million YouTube tutorials on how to do this. It's very, very important to have an adjustment layer. So the main thing about an adjustment layer is that everything that you edit is on that layer, and everything under there is still raw footage. So you have a lot of wiggle room to do things with. So I go over to my effects tab and film emulation, and I pick Dehancer Pro. So I drop it right onto that. Out of the box, it's gonna look a little weird because it has like pretty much every option on. So we're gonna change a lot of that. One thing that I love about Dehancer is that they do have the camera log recovery tool. So if you're shooting with log, you have to recover the log and you have to bring it back to a Rec 709 color space. And every camera manufacturer pretty much has their own lookup table, which is a LUT, that you can drop on, and that brings your log footage back to 709. Well, within Dehancer, they also have that ability, and it's really cool that you don't have to go searching for another LUT. You can just do it from within Dehancer Pro. You want to change it from Rec 709 down to choose camera. So now we're going to choose the camera that we want to use. All right, so our vendor would be Sony because I shoot Sony. And the camera that I use is the Sony a7S III. Sometimes I use the Sony a7 IV, sometimes I use the Sony a7C II, but majority of the time I'm using the Sony a7S III. All right, so, and I always shoot in S-Log3, gamma setting. That's the first thing I do no matter what. The next thing I do, I turn off all the other options. I turn off everything. You wanna go into Dehancer and turn off literally everything. So now you're at a base Rec 709 look. This is what it looks like. If I scroll over to the rest of my clips, they all are Rec 709. These are a little overexposed. They're all Rec 709. They look gorgeous. They look beautiful. This is basically how you recover everything. And it looks great. It looks great right out of the box. But Dehancer takes it a step further. The next cool thing about Dehancer, which is why everyone's here for Dehancer anyway, are the film profiles. They have a ton. I know a lot of people in the film world like Portra. So Portra 400 is a personal favorite of mine. So we have to enable it. So if we enable it, you get a Portra 400 look. Another look that I like, Kodak Gold, is a really popular. I like that a lot. So one of my favorite black and white is Ilford. It's a great black and white. Love it, love it, love it. Also, you get a lot of the Fujifilm stuff. I don't use a lot of the Fujifilm stuff for coloring video, but I do like Fujifilm stuff for coloring photos. So my favorite of all of these are the Kodaks. So Kodak films are a little bit more warm, and I like that, and they just have the look that I'm always looking for. So I usually stick to the Kodaks, and the Kodak one that I really like the most is going to be the Vision 350D. It's hands down one of my favorite looks. And another thing you can do with Dehancer is setting your print profile, and I think this is what sets it apart. I know a lot of people love the Kodak 2383, and it's nice. It's definitely nice. We have to enable it. It's very nice, and I think that's something that comes within DaVinci Resolve like stock, and it's very nice. But what I've been going gaga over is the Kodak glossy paper. Something about it is just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. And this is where I start my base edit. And this is where adjustment layers are great, because I'm going to be editing under this adjustment layer. All right, so first up is this clip, because it is definitely overexposed. So we'll bring these shadows down a little bit, get a little more contrast in there. I like my highlights to not be too high, but I do like a lot of contrast in my stuff. I love a lot of contrast. And we'll warm this up just a smidge. Just a smidge. All right. So that's that. It looks great. Looks great right there. Looks great. And we haven't even touched bloom or halation or anything. So this is where I start. So now I go back in and I get a little wild with it. This is where I'm going to start adding in more creative things. All right, so what I would do, film grain, absolutely love film grain. Sometimes I feel that what Dehancer gives you is a little aggressive. You do have options to go with 8mm, 16mm, 35mm, and 65mm. Of course, 8mm is like the most aggressive, and 65mm is not as aggressive, but it's there. I prefer the 65 look for some things, but I also go into custom, and I'll set it to about 5, the size about 20. Sometimes I'll bring it down. Let's bring it down to about 5. Yeah, I think that looks good. Let's enable, disable. Like, I want it to be subtle, like subtle. I don't want it to be heavy with the grain. Just subtle, just subtle. We may bring it back to 11, 10 or 11. So yeah, just subtle. And you can see what that's doing on the rest of our clips. Let's take it off and take it in. It's just like a chef's kiss, you know? It's just a chef's kiss, and I love it. Absolutely love it. The next thing I always do is bring in some halation. I love some halation. I think that really gives you that film vibe. And I normally go with a 65mm on this one, because sometimes, like I said, the 35 is a little heavy. Same here. That film grain looks amazing right there. Let's turn off the halation and see what it's doing. Yeah, the halation just gives it something. I don't know what it is, but it gives it to it. It gives it to it. But yeah, so that's absolutely beautiful. So then we come in and add a little bloom. Bloom is where it's at. So bloom is the reason why I don't shoot with Pro Mist filters anymore. I used to love shooting with Pro Mist filters because it would give me what bloom would give me, but I've since then valued having that sharper image. That way, if I need to have that sharper image, I can always have it, but I can always add bloom in post. Like, sometimes I feel like my mist filters kind of go a little too heavy, and there's no way to recover that. You can't get it back. So I prefer to do it in editing instead of in camera. So the bloom, 35mm bloom, and it just, it gives you that look, man. That is chef's kiss to me. It just, look at this. This is an absolutely beautiful image. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. All right, same here. It looks beautiful, and I know it's gonna look. Oh, the bloom looks great here. This gives this a very vintage feeling. Sometimes I will go into on the print profile and I'll add a little bit of color density, and I think that just kind of emphasizes our colors a little bit. But all in all, that's how I use it. So that's Dehancer Pro. So what do you think about it? I personally like it, and I think it fits the way that I edit my videos. And I also feel like it's a great resource and a great asset to have if you want to give yourself just that little added something. And sometimes I use just the bloom. Sometimes I just use the print profile. Sometimes I just use the film profile. So I don't use it on every single production, but I do use it if I want to set myself apart. So do I think it's worth it? I totally think it's worth it. I think it's an asset for me. But if you are still a little skeptical, you can go over to their website and you can download a free trial. So they also have an app for photos. So if you go to Dehancer in your app store, you can get that film aesthetic for your photos. And that's another valuable resource to use if you want to get that film aesthetic and you're using a sharp digital camera like I do. So that's it. Thanks for coming along with me on my tour of Dehancer Pro. Peace.